I've already heard it,
applause.
so I can give the applause. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Slow clap.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. So good to have you here, and all our friends that join us online. Awesome to have you. As we conclude this series that we're calling "I Believe in You." Now, if you haven't picked up what I'm laying down yet, I'm really trying to impress upon you the importance of our spiritual family. That we are a family of faith. God had called us together. None of us are here by accident. And we have spiritual relationships, just like Paul and Timothy, a father and a son in the faith. We have brothers and sisters here in the faith. Hopefully parents, grandparents. We have children, spiritual children here that are under our care. And I am very encouraged, and I hope you're encouraged to hear too, that many of our brothers and sisters have already, this past week, said either, yes, I want somebody to speak into my life. I need someone to believe in me. And we've also had many other people in our church family who've already checked the box, so to speak, or actually literally, and said, I want to impart spiritual life to someone in the next generation. I am praying that God will bring to me someone who I too can believe in. So I'm very encouraged by the movement of many of the people in the church. And I know most, maybe everybody, even has great intentions. But it's really important that we follow through on those great intentions and actually do what God is asking us to do. All right, if you're taking notes today, and we made that super easy for you to take notes because now you got this outline when you walked in, and you got a pen in the chair in front of you, the pocket right in front of you. So the very first main point, overarching theme today is this simple truth. One of the greatest gifts one human being can give to another is to believe in them. One of the greatest gifts one human being can give to another is to believe in them. I know many people maybe feel intimidated or overwhelmed at the idea of taking on a mentoring role. Huge responsibility, absolutely, obligation if you take that on with someone. And maybe that feels overwhelming to you. But just remember, last week we talked about how you can, just by living your life as an example, people see that, and you are mentoring just by living a godly example in your life. And today I just want to emphasize maybe a little slightly different angle on that is that it doesn't have to be something huge, right? It can be something small. Some of you know, a lot of you haven't heard kind of my story of going from, call it a regular job into the ministry. I was 30 years old when I went to seminary, and first of all, when I was 30, I thought 30 was old, and I thought, whoa, here I am, second career, making a big change. But it was a big change for our family. We had Megan, and we had a house, both had jobs, and so she and I both quit our jobs, and we sold our house, and we moved to St. Louis, started seminary, and literally, homeless and jobless. And God just provided everything that we needed. Now, often, He would provide it at the exact last minute that we needed it. So there's plenty of time to, but as He does, that builds our faith. He does that for a reason. But He did. And these are, there were so many people that supported us in prayers and acts of kindness during this journey of becoming a pastor. So many people. And you could ask any of them, and they would all say, no, we didn't do that much. It was just a little thing. It was just a little bit of time. It was a little bit of money, maybe. I just want to share three people, or three groups that meant a lot to our journey. It really showed that they believed in us. One was Bob and Sue, pictured up there in the top photo there. Bob and Sue live in the St. Louis area, out in O'Fallon, out near St. Charles, if you're familiar with the west part of town. They let us live in their basement for like 4 or more months while we were trying to get a job, to afford a house and get an apartment and get everything set up. Well, my classes had already started right at the beginning. Oh, and let me say, it's a finished basement, right? It's a bedroom and a den and an office. It was nice. It wasn't like that bad. And on top of that, a home-cooked dinner, right, every evening. How awesome was that? How incredibly kind was that? And again, you would ask them to say, we didn't do that much. We just opened our home. But wow, what an impact that made. Another couple, that's a picture of my home congregation there in the middle, Christ the King, Lutheran Church in Memphis, Tennessee. Lots of people there, of course, prayed for us and support us in many ways. But one particular couple, Charles and Clara, or Honey, she went by Honey, Charles and Honey, were they actually were old. I was accurate in that. An older couple there who heard what we were doing, invited us over for dinner, and before we moved away. And then while we were in St. Louis, every Christmas sent us a Christmas card with a sweet note of encouragement and a very nice gift, which went a long way in paying bills, but also having a nice Christmas for me and the kids. So just little bitty things like that that invested in our future. And then the last one is just one of those God connects kind of thing. We had no connection, relation, no knowledge of who this is. So her name is Dina. Dina was a member of church in North Carolina. And she participated in the Adopt a Student program at Concordia Seminary. You can adopt a student. You obviously donate money towards tuition. They match you up, and you kind of write a thank you note. Well, Dina and I had gotten into pen pals. We were constantly writing each other back and forth. Occasionally, we start calling each other, obviously Christmas cards and things. But she was just a fascinating woman. All I knew about her at the time, she was just super active in her church, right? She was the LWML. She did like quilters and made drapes. And then she traveled like crazy. I couldn't believe this, how old she was and how far she would travel to see family and see national parks, and just had a great life enjoying it. Anyway, into my years at seminary, I'm going to my first church in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And this is the moment you're waiting for. So I'm so excited. I find out where I'm going. I write Dina, and I'm telling her, this is incredible. So let me tell you about this church in Chattanooga. It was founded in 1887. It's down in the city of the church, it's downtown of Chattanooga. And guess what? They even have a Lutheran school, right? K through 8th grade. My wife's a Lutheran teacher, so it's going to be perfect. And let me tell you about the school. It's 1887, too. It started. And I'm going on this long letter, so excited about all this. Well, no sooner did she open her mailbox in that letter that she ran in the house, picked up the phone, and called me and said, Oh, I know First Lutheran in Chattanooga. My husband was the principal of that school. We lived in Chattanooga for 18 years. And I was like, oh, my goodness, this is so great. So this is neat, right, to see how God just makes these things. We look at it and they say it kind of falls in place, or a door opens or whatever. But, there's no accidents in life, right? God is in control. And all these little things that encouraged me along the way. I'm so blessed to have so many people who have believed in me, who have mentored, supported, invested in me. I would not be here without their support. Now that leads me to another point I want to make today, is that there's a huge, huge difference between leaving an inheritance and leaving a legacy. An inheritance is stuff. You can leave your house, or your car, you can leave retirement accounts, land, stuff to people. Anybody actually could buy any of that stuff and leave it to you as an inheritance. But a legacy is something completely different. A legacy is not stuff. A legacy is a person. We leave a legacy when we invest in, when we believe in, right, the next the emerging generations. Now, I've talked about really the two main pastors that really invested in me. Pastor Boyson, we talked about, he retired 30 years ago. He's in heaven now, long since in heaven. Pastor Neugebauer, Pastor Chuck, I call him. I'm just going to mention him one more time because today happens to be his last sermon, his last Sunday as the senior pastor of Christ the King at 70 whatever years old. He is retiring from ministry. But in the picture here, you can see some of his spiritual sons from that congregation who are now pastors all across the country, from Arizona to St. Louis and in between. He's leaving a legacy not just obviously at his congregation and school on that campus, but in other congregations across the country. That's the difference between leaving an inheritance and leaving a legacy. How important is it to leave a legacy? Turn to Jesus this morning in our gospel reading, and we see Jesus, we see his model for mentoring, or we can call it maybe discipleship, how he's going to disciple people. Because really, you can kind of think about it this way. Jesus basically said, hey, I've got 3.5 years left on this planet. I'm going to start creating my living legacy. And so he goes out and he discovers these disciples. Today's reading, he's walking the Sea of Galilee. These two brothers, Simon, we know him as Peter. Peter and Andrew are casting their nets in the sea. And Jesus says to them, follow me. I think it's really important to note that he doesn't plead with them. Oh, would you please follow me? He doesn't try to sales pitch them. Let me tell you about this great deal I've got. Follow me. It's supposed to be a command. And how do they respond to that command? Immediately, they just left their nets and followed him. There's a very simple model. Again, if you're taking notes, write this down. Very simple model that Jesus follows. It's so easy for us to remember. Discover, develop, deploy. Discover, develop, deploy. So easy to remember. Yeah, hey, let's have some participation today. What do you say? I want to ask you to raise your hand today. Just repeat, just say it with me. Discover, develop, deploy. One more time. Discover, develop, deploy. And we see this, and later on in the verses, we see him call John and James, brothers, also fishermen. But he calls other disciples. He discovers them, develops them, and then, of course, for 3 years, developing them. And then on the day of ascension, he gives the Great Commission. He deploys them out into the world, be his legacy to carry the gospel forth. Let me tell you a couple of other disciples that he discovered and developed and deployed. One is Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector, and this is how he made his living. He would gouge his fellow Jewish citizens. He worked for the occupiers, the Roman government, collecting taxes for Rome. But what he would do is he would take more, he would charge them more than what they were actually owed in their taxes, so he'd have some for himself. Now, Jesus noticed Matthew, observed him for a while. He kind of stood back and he looked at him, kind of got to see what Matthew was doing, and Jesus realized he is really good at doing a bad thing. He's doing bad, but he's doing it really well. And he said what he's doing, Matthew has 2 sets of books. He keeps a set of books for the government. He keeps a set of books for himself. And so Jesus comes in with those same words, that same command, follow me. And Matthew stood up from his table, left his books and his bag of money, and followed Jesus. What Jesus knew, what Matthew didn't know at the time, but what Jesus knew was that the very first book of the New Testament was going to be written by Matthew. When you open up the New Testament, Jesus wanted someone who was very accurate at recording events. Someone who was very precise in putting forth the facts. And the book starts, really, the first 18 verses, and we don't ever read those, But think about the detail of that, where he goes, so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat. And he's laying out, he's numbering the generations right, between David and Jesus, showing the fulfillment, the messianic prophecies being fulfilled in the Davidic covenant. Very, very important. Jesus discovered this, but then developed his skill and to use for good, and then deployed. He wrote the gospel. I tell you about another disciple named Thomas. Now, we know him as what? Yes, doubting Thomas. And here we are in the 21st century. This poor guy made one mistake way back when, right? And we're still calling him what? Doubting Thomas. Poor doubting Thomas. Let me tell you the rest of the story. So history would inform us, outside of the Bible, but historical accounts tell us that Thomas traveled the furthest distance of any of the disciples. He went all the way to India to spread the gospel, the news that Jesus is God, that he died for our sins, and that he rose from the dead. He was in India, this is what history tells us, and he sees the Brahmin priests standing in the water. They get out in the water waist deep, and they worship the elements. And so the priests were all there in the water. They would scoop up the water. They would throw it in the air to the sun god, and it would fall back down. They kept scooping it, throwing it up to the sun god, and it kept coming back down. And so Thomas, he pulled up his rabbinical robes, and he waded down into the water right in the midst of all of them, waist deep in the water, and he told the Brahmin priests, he said, now, you throw your water up into the air to your God, and it comes back down. Would you say, if I threw my water up into the air to my God, but it hung in air, would you believe in my God then? Who are we talking about? Doubting Thomas? Whoa. What a bold move of faith. It's kind of like, okay, God, I kind of put us out there now. Can you back me up on this? He scooped the water, he threw it up into the air, and it hung in midair. And even the legend says it's in the shape of a lotus flower, which is very important in Indian culture. And so that when the oldest churches in the world, it's in India, there's a whole community in southern India, and they call themselves Thomasites. Now, when Thomas was standing in that upper room looking at the resurrected Jesus, doubting, no, I'm not going to believe unless I see with my own eyes and feel with my hands where the nails were in your hands, put my hand where the spear hit your side, I'm not going to believe. Essentially, Jesus was telling him, you may not believe in me right now, but I still believe in you. And my belief in you is not dependent upon your belief in me. God believes in you. And you may be in a moment in your life where you're kind of doubting yourself. You're doubting your own abilities, maybe your own vocation or calling or family or relationships. You may have friends and family who are doubting you, and maybe they've already written you off. You may be even having some doubts about God. Well, I'm here to tell you, there is a God, and he believes in you. Now, the first reading we read was Paul. He's writing to his children in Corinth. He planted this church. He shared the gospel with these people the first time. He started this family, this community, this church we call it today, in Corinth. And now he's writing them a letter, and he's reminding them, by the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as a wise builder, and someone else is building on it, but each one should build with care. There's two things we can learn there. Number one, Paul says that I am a wise builder. You are a builder. All of us. We are builders. We are building something. We are going to leave a legacy. Will it withstand the fire? And the second thing we learn from this, Paul says, I've laid this foundation, but someone else is building upon it. So many of us, so often, it's so easy for us to get the idea that, well, I have come here on my own. No, all of us have been brought here. None of us came here on our own. We are all building on someone else's foundation. Someone else who believed in us, who invested in us, who encouraged us, supported us, prayed for us, enabled us to be wherever we are in our spiritual walk with Jesus, our professional lives, and our relationships. We're all building on this foundation of Jesus Christ that someone else has given us. It reminds me of this, this colloquialism. Maybe you've heard it. I remember the first time I heard it, it was Pastor Chuck. Actually, I was probably 20 years old. I was sitting in the pew, and he used this analogy. He said, if you ever see a turtle sitting on a fence post, you know one thing for certain. It didn't get there by himself. Right? I see so many people, so I'm a self-made man. And I just want to say, oh, you didn't make much of yourself, did you? None of us have come here on our own. We've all been brought here. And so the question is, well, with this gift, with this investment that has been put in our lives, how can we not give to the next generation, invest in them, believe in them? Because you know what? It sure would have been easier to believe in somebody else besides doubting Thomas. It sure would have been easier to believe in someone else besides gouging Matthew. I mean, it's easy to believe in somebody who's got it all together. What about people who look like, at least from the outside, that they don't? God believes in us. We can believe in each other too. To discover, to develop, to deploy. So there's two things I think we can do here. One has to do with the past. The other has to do with the future. In the past, I'd love it if everyone would just kind of rewind the tape, your life, your memories. Go back, go way back. And think about all of the people who've been a big part of your life, who've done something for you, big or small, who believed in you, showed that encouragement in their words and their actions, their gifts, their prayers and support, their encouragement. And then the future. Of course, the future is, what is the legacy that I'm leaving? It's my blood family and my spiritual family, this next generation. I believe we're in a very crucial time in our church, in the West, in our nation, for the next generations. Talk about all, I can't change the world. I can't change the country. I'm just the pastor of our church. But we can make a difference right here where God's planted us. So on your outline, put some questions there. As you think about the past, I would love for you to take this outline home. Maybe tonight when you do your prayers, or maybe at your devotion in the morning. I'd love just make these reflection questions. Who are some of the people who've believed in you? And write them down. If they're still alive, maybe you need to call them, text them, email them, maybe actually write a note the old-fashioned way. Say thank you. And how has their belief impacted you? In 1997, at the Emmy Awards, Fred Rogers was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award. Anybody not know who Fred Rogers is? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Do you see how we have to mentor the young generation now? How important is that? How can you not know Mr. Rogers? Okay. Lifetime achievement, nobody could question. Totally deserved it. He could talk. He could have spent hours talking about himself and all he did to change children's and ministry. He was an ordained pastor, children's ministry and education and development for decades. But he only spent 3 minutes, and he only talked about other people. This is just 60 seconds, what he said.
Oh, it's a beautiful night in this neighborhood. So many people have helped me to come to this night. Some of you are here, some are far away, some are even in heaven. All of us have special ones who have loved us into being. Would you just take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are. Those who have cared about you and wanted what was best for you in life. 10 seconds of silence. I'll watch the time.
And thank you. Thanks, God, for bringing those people into each of our lives. It made such a difference. And for the future, some reflection questions, again, tonight, tomorrow, during the week. What do you want your legacy to be? We're all builders. We're all building something. And what are you currently doing to intentionally leave a legacy? Because leaders discover, develop, deploy. Super simple ideas here at the bottom. And again, this bottom piece just tears off this week. So you write your name on there, and we've mixed these up from last week, so if there's anything on here that you think you're led to do, being a prayer partner for a confirmation student, we still need probably a dozen parents, spiritual grandparents to help us. Kids Time volunteer over there. It's could use 2 or 3 probably more. Children's choir helper. That's 1 or 2 people. It's right before the service starts over in that classroom right over there. Volunteer helper during youth group. You definitely use a few people more to help with our youth group. Our youth group is really, I'll say, exploding. I mean, it's been a great number of kids. We're really blessed. More and more kids are coming to hear the gospel with us. The Mommy and Me group, that's mostly preschool moms. They meet on Monday mornings, and it's in this same classroom right here in the lobby. It'd be so awesome, again, because mostly preschoolers, families. If some church families, moms and grandmoms would just come and just sit in the Bible study and learn. Just naturally, build those relationships, answer some of those Bible questions or life application stories of how God's worked in your life. It'd be a great example. Adopting a teacher. Member of life group, that'd be everybody, right? Life groups, we're trying to get everybody involved in the life group. We are a family. This is doing life together in a group. And then if none of those really, trip your trigger, just say, hey, I'll be a Paul. I will be a Timothy. And we can talk and find out something more specific for you, what fits better for you. So pray about that. What a tremendous gift that we've all been given to be brought to where we are today, and to remember those wonderful people that have gotten us here, and then to realize that it's really exciting. It's really exciting to be used by God to bless, support, invest in, to believe in